Hey viewers, welcome to another episode from Anything About Everything. This episode is going to be pretty interesting. It's going to be about astrology. A PhD doctorate person who studied non-renewable energy, non-renewable resource of energy, and like how his interest towards astrology came into his life, and what is he doing right now, and how does he practice it, and someone who's interested in it, how they can practice, how they can know more about it, or how they can get into practicing it. So this is going to be an interesting episode, and I'm excited to bring him on board. Hi Kiran, how's it going?
Hi, Raghu. All
How's
right.
your are you excited to start your new job?
Yeah, a couple of days more to start the new job, and then it's going to be an exciting start over again. I should say.
You're working for a brand new startup, right? Like how does that play into your you know um, goals and life goals and stuff?
It is going to be interesting. Going from I've always worked for larger companies, like 10,000, 15,000 employee companies, and now I'll be going into something. It's like pretty much it's still in stealth mode. It's not even like announced to the public. So it's going to be an interesting journey from 17,000 to being like a third or fourth employee. So it's
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
Didn't you mention you're working with the guy who worked at Tesla and stuff? Something in that you work for a very interesting project, right?
Yeah, he is a former Tesla uh, engineer. That had an interesting idea. He came out of Tesla and formed his own company, and now this is his second rodeo in the renewable energy space.
Mm.
So some pretty interesting work that's happening that I'll get to be part of, which I'm excited about.
Is it going to be, again, I might be jumping hoops here. Is it going to be one of those industry which going to be like disruptive industry, or like how does this industry space in the market, like your stuff
Well,
that you.
for the longest time, the automobile industry, or the energy industry was depending on oil and gas, right? So now there is a big impetus, there's a big push driven by climate change to seriously consider alternative energy sources.
Mhm.
Uh, and that is, being supported big time by governments from all across the world. And we are at an interesting space in America because the technology itself is not uh, old. I mean, it's not. I'm sorry, it's not anything new, but the ability to adopt it at a mass scale and move away from the fossil fuels is what makes it very lucrative, and is the whole thing is driven by a simple point that we need to move away from fossils.
Mm.
And so any and every alternative resource to fossils is going to be considered seriously. And the government here is driving very hard to support new uh, companies coming into the space to enable that. Basically, uh, we want to change the way people consume or people see what their major energy resource is going to look like. That is moving away from the fossil fuels.
Interesting. For me, what really piques the interest is like you are like hardcore, like science background person, right? And I
Mhm.
forgot to tell it to the viewers. Like Kiran has the ability to, if he knows five major life events of yours, like he'll exactly correct your birth date to the time and to the exact precise second. Like I wanted to introduce with that. So basically, like I want to understand more. How did this, because what I believe, like what I always believed was science and astrology are like two parallels. They never each other, right? If someone who believes in science, I'm trying to adjust myself for them. Yeah. Someone who believes in science doesn't believe in astrology. Someone who believes in astrology doesn't believe in science. So what was that overlap that happened in you? Like, how did you start this? And can you give me a background about that? Like, what got you into this?
Yeah. Um, so let me set, let me give you a little bit of uh, terminology when you are comparing science and astrology, right?
Mm-hmm.
Science or technology is a deterministic science, right? So you know the outcome from a technology,
Correct.
right? And science is driven by experiments, and which is pretty deterministic in nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I say deterministic in nature, you know the outcome. You have a TV remote. You turn on the TV remote, assuming your battery is good. You will always expect the TV to turn on. So it's a deterministic. You press an action and you see a result, right?
Mm-hmm.
Astrology is a probabilistic science, but it's not a deterministic science.
Okay.
When I say probabilistic science, you have multiple variables coming into the picture, right? So the outcome is determined, is not deterministic, but it is probabilistic. Something like rolling a dice up, or tossing a coin.
Fine, rolling a die.
Um, right. But the more you dive deep into it, the more you will start understanding that there is a method to this probabilistic science, which you would only start appreciating when you understand the fact that this probabilistic science, the foundations for this probabilistic science, was laid by our great rishis many, 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 many years ago, purely based on empirical observations from the sky. Probably at the time when there were no telescopes, or there were no uh, fancy gadgets to observe the planets and the stars in the skies, uh, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that they were able to correlate the occurrences or happenings in the world to the positioning of the stars in the sky, it's pretty fascinating. It's like discovering fire. And from fire, when you first discover fire, you, you do not necessarily connect that with, oh, I can cook meat or I can cook vegetable, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that connection of, okay, you have discovered fire, but what can you do with it? There would have been a certain time span before you could make that connection, right? Just like that. Okay, so this event is happening on earth. For example, an epidemic like COVID is happening on earth, where there is a lot of great misery around you, and to connect that with a certain events in the sky is pretty far-fetched thought, pretty far-fetched idea, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
the fact that our great rishis were able to do that and record the observations, the empirical observations, in a pretty consistent basis, and passed it along generations, centuries down the line. To me, it's amazing. You know it's pretty fascinating. And because of my background in science, I am more intrigued by the process of connecting, establishing those connections on the happenings on Earth to the position of the celestial bodies in the space.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my initial fascination. Um, I mean, I started out as a rebel. I started out as a rebel, just joking, looking at the newspapers and stuff. Like when you see all these astrologers dividing people into 12 groups, and then claiming that, oh, people belonging to Leo, you better watch your foot when you step out of your house. You may meet with an accident. Or, oh, people belonging to Libra zodiac, you will meet the love of your life, and, and whatnot, right? So when you read through it, just from a comic standpoint, you tend to laugh at it, and then you're like, okay, why are people wasting their time on this kind of stuff? But at the back of the mind, you're always thinking that, okay, if there's something, why, if there is no sense to it, why are still people reading it, and why is it still being published, right? So it
Mm,
was always there at the back of your mind. But what triggered my interest is basically trying to establish that connection on on uh, positioning of the celestial bodies in the sky to the happenings of events, maybe be it in your own personal life or the world events that happen, right? And it's been documented pretty over the years. It's been documented uh, that certain major catastrophic events in the earth happens when the celestial bodies are at a particular position in the sky relative to earth.
mm,
uh, so for example, the 1918 plague, the pandemic that happened previous to COVID. It's called Spanish flu. um, this happened just at the end of World War I, which is pretty much the flu shots that we all are taking now every year is actually the result of Spanish flu. It started off as a pandemic, and then it became an epidemic, and then they said, okay, just like your COVID shots, the flu shots became like an annual event. So that happened in 1918, and the combinations that existed back then were very similar to the ones that existed in 2020, resulting in COVID. Not only pandemics, you can correlate great wars that has happened in history. That gives you an idea of, civilization takeovers or civilization changes in different countries, this. But you cannot really tell it with certainty. That is why I say it is probabilistic. It's not deterministic. It's better to be on high alert uh, than getting caught in the storm, like blinded, right?
mm-hmm.
So we have these fantastic tools to go by that would let you uh, be alert, basically.
It's very interesting that you bring about this. There's one philosophical topic that I read. We all are a part of universe, and universe is a part of us, right? So when you say if someone's life, I wish I was drinking whiskey too. when
Well, cheers.
yes, so when you say like um our life, you can determine our life by our celestial positioning, right? It's very interesting. Like we all are connected and we are tied. It's yeah, it's mind boggling to me just to think that way, right? So was there like, I understand, like, you had this curiosity about like um how the life was predicted through this, or you started reading a newspaper why so many people followed it. But was there one triggering event for you that led to like where you didn't start following it, you started practicing it, where you learned about it and now you're capable of, like I said, like, you can ask people 5 events of life and you can with certainty tell exactly the day, time, and the second that they were born, like exact to the time. So going to that was a big leap, right? Like when I think about it, if I'm just interested about something, maybe I'll just like practice it or something, but not make it like a huge part of my life. And you made practicing astrology, or as well as helping me or my other cousins, like, as a part of your practice, like what is was there a trigger point, or was it like all natural curiosity?
Yeah. So for back in 20 up until 2020, I used to live in Colorado. Okay, so I lived in Colorado for almost 14 years. uh, very comfortable, very high quality of life, and mountains, and very close to the Rockies, and things were going pretty smooth. And I always used to tell people that, hey, you lived in that place for so long, you know. And I would always counter by saying that, yeah, it's going to take a lot to make me move out of here, because it's a perfect place to have your family, raise your kids, and there's nothing. I would I would still call that as my home away from home, right? But it just so happened that when I was living my life out there, my wife and kids, and pretty comfortable, and in fact, I was working on my basement. It just so happened that in the month of March, I had a job opportunity that came in from Florida, and I looked at it and I was like, I knew for the fact that, oh, if I interview for this role, I'm going to get it. Um, but the question was, do I want to take it up? And then it just so happened that I was enveloped into a complete rush of wanting to explore the unknown, even though I was rooted pretty comfortably in my own place of living. Um, right? So it just so happened that at when I was evaluating options, there was a kind of unknown force that overtook me to justify every um, argument that I would pose to myself on why I would want to move. I would come up with a counter argument from that point on, in that specific month, to actually move and take up this opportunity in Florida, right? So, for example, prior to that month of March, if somebody were to say, "Oh, yeah, why don't you move to Florida?" I would say, "Oh, it's too hot. I'm not." But after the month of March, when I got this opportunity, I would give a counter argument that, "Oh, I've lived in Colorado for this many years, so why not I go and try something different there?" And and I didn't realize the change that was happening to me, the way I was portraying, or the way I was counter arguing myself into actually moving out of Colorado. Um, it was not until, like, when I moved out of Colorado, moved to Florida, took up my new job, and that's when the question inside me was, why? What was that which made me move when I would boast to everybody about living in Colorado as the best state to be in, compared to anywhere, in comparison to anywhere else. So that was the single most changing point, where I wanted to dig deeper. That's when it occurred to me that, okay, maybe, and that's when pandemic kicked in, and all these major events triggered a deep sense of curiosity inside me on wanting to study the Vedic astrology, um, to understand if I could come up with a plausible explanation for the events that were happening, globally, and as well as personally, uh, which triggered my move uh, from Colorado to Florida. It's a major displacement for me because I've lived there for 14 years and now I had to move. So there should have been a trigger point. And I wanted to understand what was the trigger point, and I used Vedic astrology as a springboard to try and understand if I could explain previous such occurrences, which would be the time when I moved from India to America, um, right? And
Mhm.
establish some kind of a correlation. So that is how it all started. That's pretty much how the deep dive started. Prior to that, I had a pretty layman's knowledge, a little bit more than a layman's knowledge on astrology, but it was only uh, in 2020 when I started doing a systematic study. And yeah, I'm nowhere near understanding uh, uh, Vedic astrology. It's an ocean, right? So it's a great resource that our Maharishis have left behind, and I don't think we could I could accomplish or have an understanding uh, to explain.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Um, it's pretty interesting how you try to explain the unknown and you chose the route of Vedic astrology. Are there different when you say Vedic astrology? Are there different kind of astrology, and what's the difference between astrology and numerology? Like, do you have any idea about that?
Yeah, astrology, astrology has different strands. Look, every civilization have their own way of probabilistic science. You have Western astrology here, and then you have Vedic astrology, and Greeks, they followed something else, and Chinese, they have their um, astrology system that they follow, right?
Mhm.
But um, Vedic astrology, it really, uh, it opens up. Um, it's purely based on mathematical calculations,
Wow.
and it is not. When I say probabilistic science, it is not. It's probabilistic science in the outcomes, but the calculations are highly mathematical. That was another reason that got me interested on uh, you have computers now, so you can plug in your birth date, and then you can get a snapshot of your birth chart and what the sky looked like when you were born. But in order to do this with hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, um, when you did not have access to any computers and stuff, in order to do it manually, hand calculations, it's pretty amazing, right? So if you were to ask, oh, where was Jupiter at what angle relative to Earth was Jupiter in this particular time frame, you'll have to go through a pretty rigorous calculations to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And all those calculations are imbibed in the form of shlokas. A
Mm.
shloka is a verse, Sanskrit verse that describes a mathematical equation in a poetry form, right? It's so beautiful. Now the reason why it is in poetry form is you don't easily forget poems, right? You don't easily forget songs. When you learn something in a song format, you don't really forget what you're learning, right? So that's the reason why you have all these mathematical equations presented in the form of a Sanskrit verse, which we call shloka, and it's been passed over a number of years, which it's been translated now, and that's also another reason for a lot of corruption that has happened in this field, uh, because there are a lot of people who just wants to take shortcuts and just focus more on the outcome of the probabilistic science without realizing the fact that it's probabilistic science. It's not deterministic, and it depends on your interpretation of events, right?
Mm.
So you may be interpreting an event which may not be relevant to you or to your age group. So you need to have, in order to have a holistic understanding of it, it takes many years of studies.
Wow. Amazing. I want to ask you about one more thing. In Hindu, right? In Hinduism, like all the festivals are not exactly on the same day. Like here, in US, like the Christmas falls on exactly 25th December, right? For us, like if we talk about like Krishna Janmashtami, that is Krishna's birthday, it's always fall on different days. Like as per Hinduism, we shouldn't celebrate the birthday on the same day, like the calendar day. Why is that? And can you give us more light on that? Can you throw more light on that?
Yeah, it's not just festivals, it's even your own birthdays. Even in your own birthdays, it doesn't fall on the same day,
Mm-hmm.
right? The reason for that is, when you were born, the angles, the relative position of the sun and moon and all other planets, they have a fixed coordinate, right? They have a fixed coordinate relative to Earth.
Hmm.
So now, when your actual birthday, of course, you cannot get that exact positioning of all the planets every year, but what we call a birthday is when the Earth has made a complete revolution, one complete revolution around the sun, right? So that's what you call a birthday
365.
in
Yes.
in Western sense.
Correct.
Okay, but in Vedic astrology, we go one step ahead and say that okay, uh, the sun stays in a particular zodiac sign over a span of 27 to 31, 27 to 31 days, right? In a single zodiac. And so we take a specific date as your as birthday in Western system. But
Hmm.
in Vedic astrology, we introduce another parameter, which is the position of the moon with respect to the sun. Okay. Now the moon uh, revolves around the Earth over 24 hours, right?
Correct.
So what we say in Vedic astrology system is your birthday is not when the Earth has completed one complete rotation around the sun, but the moon also has to be in a particular angle which it was at the time of your birth, while the Earth is in that particular zodiac, in a given zodiac. So, for example, if your birthday is say June 15th of every year, in Western system, June 15th will be your birthday every year. But in Eastern system, we would also take into account where the moon was at the time of your birth, and when that moon would come to that exact same position with respect to sun and earth in any given year. So that would be different, because of the orbit dynamics of moon.
Hmm.
And if it was a perfect circle, then you would have Vedic system and Eastern system have the same birthday, predict the same day as your birthday, right? But we don't have a perfect circle.
Hmm. Correct. It's like more of a elliptic,
So
like
we
a,
have
yeah.
elliptical, we have an elliptical orbit, right?
Correct.
So that kind of makes your makes the days makes your birthday slightly delayed, or it could be ahead of your actual birthday,
Hmm.
depending on where the Earth is in that particular year.
Interesting. I've read in a book like my moon controls your mind and sun controls your body. Like that's why you have the circadian rhythm, right?
Yeah,
The
the
sun
sun is
control.
your soul, and
Yeah.
the moon is your soul, which is also your personality,
Hmm.
right? And the moon rules your mind, the dark and deepest secrets that you hold within yourself. That's uh,
Interesting.
you're right.
Yeah, and it's interesting like how Eastern culture like try to like have birthdays or like festivals exactly at the same time so that it's like one full cycle, and that's
Right.
when you celebrate, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't criticize it, Eastern astrology versus Western astrology. It's just that Eastern astrology, Vedic astrology, it gives you a little bit more tools. It's like it gives you an added parameters that you could evaluate, right?
Hmm. Correct.
So when you're designing a product, uh, you design a product for cost, weight, and volume, right?
Yeah.
But if you take off the weight and volume, and if you just design it for the cost, then you would not have much customers, right? You cannot get that optimal product.
Correct, correct.
You're going into the market assuming that, oh, everybody would be okay with a particular cost for the product.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same. Here you instead of dividing a pizza into 12 pieces, uh, 12 sections of your zodiac, you in Vedic astrology, you further divide that individual piece of that 112 segment into 27 different segments,
Oh,
which basically gives you a lot more information, a lot more data,
lot.
makes it a lot more precise on where you are, uh, you know. So, yeah, I'm not going to go into a lot of details again, but at a high level, it just gives you it's a little bit more precise.
Gotcha. And when we talk about astrology, right, we talk about what do you call it? Um, Personalities, like key personality traits, right?
Mhm.
Each person, like here when I see, like if I see Libra, like Libra man traits or Libra woman traits. And back then when I was dating, like I used to see, is Libra man compatible with a Scorpion woman or something like that, right? So you can try to say traits. And how does this come into picture? And if someone wants to get into relationship or someone wants to marry, like how does this play a role in it?
I would say it'll work for the first date, maybe second date or third date, but I would never really go into a relationship just based on, oh, I'm a Libra male, so would I be compatible with a air sign, airy sign, or a fire signs? No, it's okay for making that first impression, but not necessarily beyond that.
You busted my bubble, Kiran. That was my pickup line, especially when it came really good. I used to be like, "Did you?" I checked out my sign. We are absolutely compatible, like stuff, and it always got me a second date.
Well, I will be honest with you. That's how everybody, I would be lying if I did not do that too. Uh, but yeah, on a serious note, you
Hmm.
know, it it will help you on the first 2 3 dates, but
Hmm.
beyond that, there's a lot more that goes into understanding why. I mean, you could uh, counter argue those experiences with many examples where people with similar supposedly compatible sun signs would
Yeah,
completely grow apart,
correct,
would be completely incompatible.
correct, true.
uh, Whereas people with what was supposed to be an incompatible zodiac sign would be would be doing very well,
True, true. It's
so then that adds to the question on, okay, what explains that.
correct.
So when you dig deeper, that this is where Vedic astrology will give you a lot of tools to assess, okay, what really is going on here? How could we explain these two signs that everybody says are so incompatible, should never be together, but they are extremely fond of each other and they are living together as the most happy couple, uh, you know and when you dig deeper, Vedic astrology provides those tools for you to understand or assess the situation there.
Gotcha. And like in our Hindu like marriages, right? Arranged marriage is common. Before even guy and girl meet, they show astrology and they make sure the astrology matches. What is that then? What is that based off of?
Yeah, so it is, like I said, in Vedic astrology is a tool, right? It gives you a tool to understand the environment around you and you as a person. It helps you to understand your interactions with the environment and how the environment is going to interact with you, right? Um, so you use the tool to understand a personality of a male and a female, and there are certain empirical observations that have been recorded in the texts, in the Vedic astrology texts, that you use to then make these calculations and understand whether it's a compatible match. So, for example, I said every zodiac is subdivided into 27 further divisions,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, so it gives, I'm sorry, not 27 further divisions. Every zodiac is uh, subdivided into what we call as nakshatras,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you have, a zodiac at 360-degree, a zodiac spans over 30 degree, right? 12 times 3, 12, 360 divided by 12 is like 30 degree, right? Now
Yeah.
you take that 30 degree and further subdivide that into as many divisions as possible, then you can precisely point out what your traits are, right? Now, each division is ruled by a particular deity, and the characteristics of the deity and the expectations from the deity will give a hint of where this person's personality and mind is inclined to, right? Now, you
Mm.
take those characteristics and then you understand the person that you're trying to match with, and then see if there is a compatibility there in terms of similarities with the characteristics of this deity and as against the characteristics of the other ruling person, right? A simple example would be America gets along well with Canada, but America doesn't get along well with North Korea, for example, right? So you're trying to understand the history of the country and why it is not getting along. It's okay. It's getting along well with Canada, but not getting along well with North Korea, right? So
Mm-hmm.
so you try to assess that. So it's just like that. Even in Vedic astrology, you try to assess by subdividing the zodiac into many smaller divisions. You can ascertain the characteristics of the person in a much more precise way, and then test that for compatibility with the person that you're trying to match with.
Gotcha. And when when you said like about country not getting along with country, is astrology very specific to just like human beings? When I say living forms, is it like, or can we see like country, political parties, like, or like cricket teams, or like soccer or NFL teams? Like, is can you even predict those stuff as well in astrology?
Everything, if you have a spanner, you can use that spanner to tighten the bolt in the chair that you're sitting, or you can also use that spanner to work on your car, or you can use that spanner to work on any equipment, right? A spanner is a tool. You can use
Correct.
it in many different places, right? So just like that, Vedic astrology is a tool. You can use it for countries' relationships with other countries, war predictions, pandemic predictions, um, outcomes from sports. Yeah, there are people across the world who have done very serious sadhana in this space to specialize in, predictions, political election outcomes and sports outcomes, and it's pretty fascinating. Yeah, I mean they're not always right, but this tool helps you to explore the possibility of an outcome that itself is like it's pretty it feeds the curiosity of a human brain,
Hmm.
and the
Yeah.
more you observe, the more you assess, the more confidence you're going to build in that tool, right? The more times you use spanner, the better you get at it and using it comfortably, right? So
Correct.
that's pretty much what Vedic astrology does to you. Like you can understand the personal traits, personal characteristics, and you can also, if it is applied. I know for the fact that a lot of people, a lot of very well renowned astrologers, they use it for election predictions, and they're
Hmm.
not always right, but they do.
Yeah.
And the reason why they may not be always right is because it's, again, it is only as, see, as good as, your predictions will be only as good as your the data that you provide for the tool, right? So if your birth that what I mean by that is your birth time. So if your
Hmm.
birth time is accurate, then your prediction is likely to be more accurate,
Gotcha.
right? So you
Yeah,
cannot even the spanner that you use, you have to use it on an appropriate sized bolt, otherwise,
it's
or
useful.
a nut, right? Otherwise, you're never going to fit it. You're like, oh, I have a tool, I have a spanner, I'm trying to, tighten or loosen this bolt and nut, but it's not working. It's the same thing with astrology too. People don't understand that. They just think that, oh yeah, you just take a column and you can apply it to yourself and expect it to work and then get all pissed with the astrologers. No, that's not how it works.
Can I implement astrology to stock market and options and I can make money? Is that possible?
You can. There's a segment of astrology called financial astrology that
Huh.
people do.
Wait, you can predict the stock market like a stock, and you can with probabilistic, like you can say like, oh, this stock is gonna move up, so I can bet on it.
Yeah, but mind you, it's a lot of mathematical calculations. You need to know the about the company, when the company was formed, exact time, and the people involved in the company and their time of birth, and the past events of related to that company, like critical events of that company, and when a lot of major events happened associated with that company, and then yeah, by all means you can predict. But what are the odds that you're going to get all the data?
That is true. That is
Yeah.
true. Wow, it's pretty fascinating when you think like astrology can be applied to anything and everything. That's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
And Kiran, I remember once you mentioning this is what like really struck my interest first, right? I'm a data analyst, data scientist, like whatever, data analyst by profession, right? So when I asked you about astrology and you were talking about this, like I'm a firm believer of like testing and believing if something works, right? Like I work on websites, so I know if an offer works, if there's more conversions on that offer. If it's not, then something is wrong, right? So when I asked you this, you told me a very interesting story about how you pulled the data. It might be disturbing for the viewers, but you said you pulled down the data of like Ted Bundy and like Charles Manson. At the other side, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, and you pulled out their life events and you started comparing your results. Like when I say results, like you pulled down their life events, corrected their birth time, and then you said, okay, this is what should happen at this age. And when you went looked up internet, like this what should have happened, you clearly saw patterns. Can you talk more about that? Like how did that start off?
Yeah, well, again, it goes down to accurate birth time of a person, right? So when you
Mhm.
have an accurate birth time of a person, you can use that birth time to see what has happened with historical figures, good or bad. You can apply it to the historical figures, and there are tremendously knowledgeable people who have done this in the past and who have compiled great many books. It's not I'm not adding anything new to the astrology space. Let me make that very clear. It's it's a tool that I am trying to learn how to use it right. Okay. From that point of view, I can only talk from uh, how we could use the tool and how we could validate to what some of the observations that we need to make, that we can make, right?
Mhm.
um, so one of the serial killers, it fascinates everybody. Ted Bundy was a serial killer, right? So it fascinates. So you want to understand if there is some unique combinations, or if there is something unique about these serial killers that has made them do all the crazy things that they did in their lives, right? So when you do that research, yeah, I mean, you start seeing some patterns, and when
Wow.
you dive deep, you start. I'm not going to reveal what those combinations need to be, and all that. I don't want your audience to go all crazy and uh, be worried about, because again, it may materialize or it may not materialize, even if you have that combination in your chart. uh, that is to be seen. there are many other parameters that comes into play, which could trigger whether a person with a combination can will become a serial killer, as against has the potential to become a serial killer, or whether he'll be completely dormant. Those are three different things, right? Um, but without going into all that, but yeah, I mean, you'll start seeing patterns when you have accurate birth time data. Same thing goes for world's richest people, like Jeff Bezos and Bill
Bill.
Gates, and Elon Musk. And when you look at their charts, you don't have accurate birth data, but you definitely can, from a very high level perspective, you definitely can see a certain combinations in their chart that could explain massive wealth accumulation. But there would be many other people who were born within the time frame who would have that same particular combination, but they are not as wealthy as Elon Musk, or except for example, Elon Musk was born on January 1. I'm just making up the date. If he was born on January 1, 1970 or 70, I don't know his exact date, 1970. On that same day, there were so many other people that were born within that same time frame, but not everybody are Elon
Is it?
Musk. What
Yeah.
makes Elon Musk, right? So this is where the subdivisions of the zodiac comes into picture. Like, you further subdivide the zodiac into smaller divisions, and comb through it to understand the precise positioning, precise angle of all these planets and their connections with the other planets, and uh, uh, other celestial bodies and stuff, right?
Mm. And this is getting a little dark, but it's fine. It's just my curiosity. Can you predict someone's death to astrology to the precise date?
I should probably not say this, but it is something that I have not necessarily. Uh, I know it is possible, but it is something. It's not my field of interest. Let me put it that way. It's not
Mm.
something that I necessarily look for, or go deep or dive deep into. But the simple answer is yes, you can. I mean, again, you cannot. When I say you can, all I mean is you can say it with you can say it with high probability that there is something life-changing event that could happen in a person's life in a particular year, which could result in death
Wow.
or major illness.
Yeah. Sorry for that question. It was just like it just came to my head. Is that possible?
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
But for me, what is more interesting for me is using astrology to help people that uh, um, that need help. For example, like there's this Netflix documentary. It's probably they're still there on Netflix, where it was about missing persons case, unsolved
Mystery.
murder
Mm.
from many years ago,
Okay.
that they have not been able to trace the actual killers.
Mm.
Um, so one of my field of interest is how can astrology be applied to that unsolved case, to help and find some closure to the families.
Wow.
Yeah.
Um. Yeah. I mean, it's just to switch gears a little. Funny part, like, have you watched this documentary Tiger King at all?
Tiger King, yeah. I mean, he's that crazy guy in Florida.
Yeah. No, no, no. The woman, the Carol Baskin is from Florida. He's from somewhere like I forgot where, like somewhere I think Alabama or something. But Carol Baskin's husband, I forgot his name. He takes a flight and he goes missing. Like till date, nobody knows what happened. The family has not got closure. So in the second season, they try to bring in like these people like some weird people like oh I know where he is. I exactly know what happened at this time and stuff. Yeah, it's pretty interesting that you bring that up. And those kind of things, also could be explained through astrology. Like it's pretty mind-boggling.
Yeah, I
Right?
mean, if Carol Baskin's husband's time of birth is available, then you could have seen that coming.
Wow.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know how many viewers I have, but listening to this, a lot of people might hit you up. I'm not even kidding. There's this whole Facebook page about let's find Carol Baskin's husband, like kind of thing, who killed. Like, there's also a speculation that she killed her husband for money. And I don't know what is true or what is not, but there's all these speculations going on. And it's a huge thing. There are people who protested and stuff and all. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
yeah,
Um, yeah, you're about to say something?
yeah. I mean, I'm not sure if you know, there was this Bollywood actor called Sushant Singh Rajput, who he was
Yeah, yeah.
pretty popular actor, and he uh, people claim that he killed himself, but then I know a very one of my guru who's an astrologer. He was able to take a look at his chart and then say pretty confidently that he was actually murdered, and the murderers are not likely to be punished in this lifetime. But that doesn't mean that karma will not catch up to them. But it is highly likely that this case will go unsolved, and the murderers will get away with it. And it was
Wow.
really fascinating to me. And the another interesting fact about that prediction, or that assessment, was um, he did not even have an accurate birth time for Sushant Singh Rajput. He was able to assess that from his sister's birth chart, who had a pretty precise birth time uh, from Sushant Singh Rajput's sister's chart, right?
Wow.
So that to me is like it's not a complete closure. It's not something that family of Sushant Singh Rajput would like to hear, but it's some kind of a closure
Yeah.
for the family, instead of you know being hung out and looking for answers. But yeah, I mean, and we are seeing that it's been what, 3 years now, 3.5 years now, and nothing has happened.
Yeah. I'm not for I know that he passed. I know it was like based on what I know, like he hung himself or something, but I didn't follow much about the case. I don't know. I know it was a huge case there. They tried to like, put it on some heroin. I have no idea what it was.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, forensics are not inconclusive, and they know that, okay, at least there is some bad hand involved in it, but that's why CBI took over the case. But they haven't come forth with any conclusive evidence or conclusions to close the case or book people. Nothing has happened.
Yeah, it's pretty sad.
Yeah,
I mean, not to go down like, the same lines. Have you watched this movie Talwar? It's by It's it's based on the Arushi Talwar case where nobody knew what happened with this small kid who killed her. Some people say parents killed her. Even that's in biggest unsolved case. It's an
yeah,
amazing movie, right?
yeah. In fact, I've been following that case forever since I was in my high school.
It even today it's unsolved, right? If I'm not wrong.
it they were able to. No, I think it is. Uh, they held parents guilty of the murder.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow. Wow.
they held parents guilty of the murder, but it's on. I think it's based on circumstantial evidence. I don't think it's based on they were able to. The prosecution were not able to prove it conclusively, but I
Mm,
think public opinion was so heavy on this case. I feel like it was that kind of swayed the decision against the parents.
parents.
Yeah,
Yeah, for I know for years that was unsolved, and I tried following it after watching the movie, like watch some interviews, but it was pretty disturbing, so I couldn't dig in much.
yeah. I bet you the astrology will be able to play a whether the government authorities, they would all probably agree. They would probably take help on the, under the table, and try to use some of these mechanisms to provide some kind of a guidance in solving these cases. Uh, but I bet astrology will be very useful in providing leads
These kind of
for these
situations.
kind of situations, and also situations where, medical astrology is another big field where, you probably hear people going to the doctor and doing all kinds of diagnosis, and the doctor just writing off, there's nothing wrong with the patient, but the patient is not convinced, he still has some kind of a discomfort in his body. Astrology plays a role in pointing out that section of the body where, there is probably a problem. And then when you go with that kind of a data to the doctor can focus on that portion of the body more precisely, and then determine that, oh, okay, we never really saw this. There are cases where this has happened, that doctors were in fact helped with by astrology and pointing out to where the source of the problem is.
Wow. So medical, finance, crime, like what else? Marriage, everything.
Politics,
Yeah,
sports.
politics, sports, yeah,
Yeah,
country,
I know
war.
my guru predicted Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback in history. My guru predicted Tom Brady would win the game, retire, and then come back to win another uh, game after
Mm-hmm.
retirement. He was able to predict that based
Yeah,
on Tom Brady's time of birth.
wow. Yeah, Tom Brady has done his retirement thing a couple times now. Like, if I'm not wrong, I think he announced retirement when he was in Patriots, and then they came back. Then he moved to like Buccaneers in Tampa. He
Yeah,
won it, and then he called retirement again. He came back, and then now he retired again. Fair
yeah,
enough.
yeah.
Interesting.
So these all make up for pretty fascinating cases.
Kiran, one more question that really intrigues me. For people who don't like me as eye candy can see up. This is just for the video.
That will be a nice little distraction.
With all these deep talkings and stuff, deep talks and stuff. Anyways, so when you mentioned about past life and current life, karma and stuff, can astrology predict like what was I in the past life and what was I doing in the past life?
It cannot. Yes, it can give you an idea of what kind of affairs you were dealing with in the past life. Where was your mind in the past life, and what was your karma in the past life.
Hmm.
It can provide you that kind of an information.
Wow, interesting. So if I have like in if I'm going through something in this life, can astrology say that is the reason for it? Like that is it because like I did something wrong here or I didn't do something wrong in my past life? Can astrology throw some light on that or no?
See, this is where I have not formed my opinion on it, but I feel like astrology and karma are like two different things. Karma is basically, it's like a pipeline. You keep accumulating, and you keep uh, you know letting it go. So if you accumulate good karma or bad karma, the consequences of that is what you will be experiencing as you live your life. Now the free will, that you are going to act, free will is what actions that you are going to take on the consequences that will determine your subsequent pipeline for your karma, right?
Mm,
So it's like a give and take, you know. Yeah, you did something shitty in many lives ago, and you are facing consequences now. But what are you going to do? Are you going to correct yourself, or are you going to not learn from it and then keep doing more harm? So it's a vicious cycle. Um, so that is where I am not sure how that connects with astrology.
gotcha.
It's a pretty deep. It needs a little bit more research.
Mm. So, say someone who thoroughly believes in astrology and they want to get into learning astrology and trying to, just like the way you help others, like they want to genuinely help others. You did, you can, I want you to talk about two things here. Like, I want you to talk about like how someone who's interested want to get into it, where do they start, how do they start, do they have to seek a guru? And I want you to end with, um is there, like you did speak a little bit about it, is there people in current generation, like, are they misusing astrology and trying to do stuff around? So if you could start off with, say, I am interested, I don't know anything, I got to know like what are the uses of it, and I want to focus on one particular, like maybe finance, or maybe like stock market, or like anything, like where would I start and how would I start?
So my guru, when I first took a deep dive, there are a lot of information on internet that's available to you, but those are all pretty superficial, and they don't really, you quickly outgrow them, or you can quickly dismiss them by your own rational thoughts, your own logical thoughts. That yeah, this could be true. This is definitely not true, and this is false, and stuff like that. But in order to do some serious study, I would recommend your viewers to go to this website called vedicastrology.org. The person that runs this website, he is my guru. I have not spoken with him. I have not met him. The beauty of Hinduism is, you can make somebody your guru without their own, blessings or knowledge. I apologize to my guru if he takes this as an offense, if he, ends up hearing this. But for me, the kind of work that he has done, and the amount of sadhana and tapasya that he has put in this space is nothing less than a modern day rishi. He to me is a modern day uh, mini Shankaracharya, I would call. And he's a person from, he's a gold medalist from IIT Madras, and his father was a famous astrologer, and he came to US and studied here, and then he's developed this software that's available for free to download for anybody, and that will be a very good starting point. And basically, for somebody that's starting from scratch, I would say, try to put in your cast your own birth chart and try to understand like what the birth chart is trying to communicate, and then correlate that to your life's events, right? You may not find immediate correlation because your birth time may not be correct. This is where your birth time needs to be corrected based on your uh, past known facts in your life. It could be your first job, your first degree, or your first vehicle, or some major event that has happened in your life. That will be a good starting point. Vedic astrologer, vedicastrology.org. And there are plenty of other resources and manuals there that you could read through and try to understand. As to your second question, what was your second question?
The second question was, are there people like who misuse astrology, right?
Misuse astrology.
Yeah.
Right. That's a very important question. The answer is yes. There are a lot of people. Um, I would say misuse is also okay as long as you misuse for your own for your own predictions.
Oh.
Okay, but you should never really uh, misuse that to gain from somebody. You should not misuse the predictions to actually materially gain from the person that you are trying to provide predictions for.
Mm.
Unfortunately, a lot of it is happening today. People are still fascinated by the fact that it's a probabilistic science, it's a predictive science, and so you're always wanting to peek. If somebody were to give you a peek into the future, yeah, I mean, why not, right? So that kind of an attitude always tends to not bode well with the actual use of the tool itself. Um, that is one argument. The other argument is, even if people were to misuse it, I believe that the fact that it is going to trigger some kind of a learning process in them, uh, and this is my hope, that even though they start off by misusing it, but eventually they would be so absorbed by the vastness of this tool, that my hope is they would correct themselves and understand it, um, and get the real meaning and purpose of how they could use that tool. That will be for the greater good of humanity as a whole, and it would minimize the misuse.
As a layman, it might, I don't know, maybe it's just a question right off my head. Like, as a layman, can I see if someone is can I see that, okay, this person doesn't know what they're talking, they're just like giving wrong information? Like, can I see that, or is there any way to say that they're doing, when someone is like wrongly predicting something? Is there a way that I can say, or no, there's it's just not possible?
Yeah, of course you can. You could, when somebody says with 100% confidence that this is going to happen in your life in this particular time, then you can pretty much dismiss them as not being accurate, because again, uh, this is a probabilistic science. Okay, so you can only say it with a certain level of confidence, the likeliness of that event happening. Okay, not by saying 100% that, oh, this is going to happen. When people make that kind of statements, I would definitely stay away from them. And also, there could be a lot of language barriers as well, that people don't really get, that when they say 100% this is going to happen, as against there's 100% probability that this may happen. There's a lot of language barriers there, but again, it needs a kind of tapasya, it needs a kind of sadhana to actually get the terminologies right. And you don't want to tell a person sitting in the hospital, in the hospital, in the ICU, and when somebody comes and asks you that, oh, is he going to be alive? Or you don't want to say that, oh, he's 100% going to die. And then next day he gets all right and he comes back, and you don't want to be that astrologer to get thrashed by his relatives.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
So, a person who doesn't believe in astrology at all, is he missing out something? Like, should everybody believe in? What is your general take on it?
no, nobody should believe anything and everything. It has to be your own. It has to be one's own personal journey that needs to drive towards understanding that there is something bigger that's driving the whatever is happening on earth. So when you realize, when there is an urge within you to determine answers or find some kind of a way of explaining, that's when you would start looking at what could explain these events. And naturally people will be drawn towards uh, you know predictive science,
Hmm.
predictions.
Gotcha.
So, so definitely, I don't think. And to answer your other question on, are they missing out something? I don't think they're really missing out anything. They are definitely living through their life, and yeah, I mean, it's perfectly fine.
Can you base your everyday life based on astrology? Because I remember someone, they used to see the newspaper astrology or internet astrology for every day based on their star sign, and they used to say, "Oh, I'm not going to do this today. I'm not going to do that." Like, is that like true? Are they in the right path? Is there something like that where people can live life based on astrology every single day?
Um, you can, and there are people that do that, and there are, big politicians that start their day, big businessmen that start their day by, with a briefing from their personal astrologers.
Even today?
Even today, they may not accept it, but even today they do. They start off their day with, a brief from their personal astrologer, if not on a daily basis, at least on a, fortnightly basis. They do that. But I would not, for me, like I said in the earlier part of the segment, I'm not more concerned on the outcome as such. I'm more concerned about the tool. The tool itself is still needs, it's very vast, but people are hung up on the outcome of the tool, right?
Mhm.
Um, so when you have one nut and bolt that you need to use the spanner for, you just use the spanner and you throw it away because you accomplish the task of, tightening or loosening your bolt, whatever uh, you need the result to be. But when you have a thousands and thousands of bolt and nuts, you're not going to throw the tool away, right? You're going to try and find how you could optimize the use of your tool. You're going to automate the use of that tool, right? So I'm, because of my background, I'm more interested in how efficiently I could apply this tool to help people answer in a probabilistic way uh, some of the questions that they need answers for.
Gotcha. Wow, that's a lot of information for me to digest. It was amazing. So coming a little bit driving away from astrology, like I want to pick your brains as a person, right? Um, what else other than astrology piques your interest? Like what else do you do? Like what else do you like other than astrology?
I was really into motorcycles until my kids happened, and now my motorcycle is lying dormant. Although I have revived it, and I've got an ultimatum from my wife that I either use it or lose it. But yeah, I was really into motorcycles, um, and I'm constantly thinking about how do you make the most of opportunities that are presented to you. I'm a guy with very diverse interests. It could be business related, it could be tech related, it could be movie making, and I was a videographer and a photographer.
You did my first portfolio ever.
Yeah. Exactly. So my interests, when I'm when I tend to hop from one interest to another, and I'm not the kind of person that would stay on and linger on for a long time. That's because of my inherent nature of wanting to explore uh, things as they present to me, and what I see, where I would truly enjoy my time, spending my time in.
Nice.
So right
Um,
now, that focus is in watching my kids grow and ask me all crazy questions and making sure that I'm available to answer their never-ending questions.
amazing, amazing. I've always heard like kids gives you a different perspective in life. I've never been a father. Like when I see, of course I see you, I see a few of my colleagues, like for them when they talk about kids, there's a different joy that comes on their face. Like it's a different, like I see a different energy in them, like where they're so happy and they prioritize kids so much. Like when I go to office, like yeah, I go out with friends, have a drink or go out for dinner. They always like, make sure the time that they get with the kids, they spend the utmost time that they can with the kids, and then they prioritize everything after that. So
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
right, but
Absolutely.
for me, like I'm always like scared. Like, okay, if I have kids, would I have to give up on all my other fun of life? And when you talk about doing so many things, it kind of brings a lot of hope to me, though, to be
Yeah.
honest.
No, I know I would have never been that guy to agree that yeah, kids bring you so much joy and you could enjoy so much, especially at the time when I had my motorcycle and then all thought about was just enjoying life and going on rides and stuff. I'm like, you know, what, you want to spend time with your kids? No way. I'm happy where I am. But now, after my kids, it's just completely different perspective. It
Yeah.
is okay to for my motorcycle to lay dormant. No, it can wait.
Uh, my colleague told me a very interesting statistics. He said you spend 90% of your interaction, like face to face time with your kids, until they're 18 years, and rest after, like, only 10% of the interaction that you have face to face is after 18 years. So he said, I want to make the most of my 90%, so I'm always around my son, whatever he does. Sometimes he doesn't even like me, but I'm there. But I just want to make my 90% most. So that
Yeah,
that is
I'm pretty sure I told the same statistic to somebody else that I don't remember. I don't recall, but I that's pretty much the same argument that I made.
Mm,
The time that you get with your kids is like 2 days, Saturday, Sunday, until they are like 10 or 12-year old. That's it. Even after 12-year old, they have their own friend circle that they'll be busy with, and you got to maximize that time
nice
until they are like 10 or 12 and 2 days of that week. That's why weekends are really important that you are there
with the kids.
with the kids. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think I still have time. I'll sleep over it. I have few more philosophical questions that I ask my viewers. The first one is, if you wanted to know a meaning of one thing, like you wanted to know everything about one thing, what would that be?
That is a pretty deep question. And again, even in that, this is just me. I would not have just one question. I would have many questions in many different
Things that you want to know everything about.
aspects of life. Yeah, I can talk to you. I can tell you about just last week. I was out fishing in Juno Beach Pier, and it was so fascinating to watch the fish biting a particular specific type of bait. It's called crappie jig. And I'm like, what? It's called crappie jig? And I had a different lure, and I was struggling so hard to have anything come and bite my pole. But people next to me, they were, catching fish all day long.
Wow.
And when I asked them, it was like, yeah, it's called crappie jig. So the question to me immediately is, what is it that makes the fish bite that crappy jig more than my fancy and shiny looking lure? Things like that. It's like, I probably ended up spending more time than I should have in trying to understanding the fish thinking and the dynamics involved in it. But the
Wow.
people were like, oh, one person was successful in a particular jig, oh, even we switch out to that same jig. It's like herd mentality.
Yeah, true.
So that's just one example. So there's this, I know it was a high level philosophical questions, but the point I'm trying to make is every day you will be presented with opportunities like these, which would be unexplainable to you, which you would not have a immediate answer about. And I think as human beings, especially in today's world, you don't necessarily delve too much into understanding or making an attempt to understand. uh, but we all should take time to observe the nature around us, environment around us, and and come up with not just one question that you cannot explain. Like, you should come up with many questions that you cannot explain.
That leads to my next question. Um, what is one thing or a couple things that you had always believed in was true, but over the period of time, you figured out it wasn't true? Like it could be an instant, it could be something that you believed in.
I always believed in um, engineering. Over a period of time, I've come to an understanding that okay, engineering is overrated. I would have much rather been a politician.
Yeah.
No, I say that in a very serious sense because you can truly bring about change. You can truly bring about change to people's lives. Um, you know, and contribute a lot more to humanity in truest way. And we
Hmm.
have some great young leaders, upcoming leaders that are exactly doing that, and that have been successful engineers and MBAs and bureaucrats that are jumping into politics now. I'm talking specifically in India that are
Hmm.
actually changing the dynamics and understanding.
Hmm. Interesting. Is there anything else that you believe in? Like for me, I believe like when time comes, I'm gonna do this. When it's the right time, I'm gonna do this. Like I always thought that, but I figured out like talking to my friend Javier, he told me this, and it kind of like it was like epiphany moment. I'm like, I do the same. Like he told me like there's no right time to do things. You just make time and you just do it. You just dive into it and learn it, or do it, or travel it, or whatever it is. There's no right time to do it.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I totally agree with your friend. You could plan all you want, but then the correct way of it is actually just doing it. Like
yeah,
how I randomly wanted to go and fish, for example.
how's
Just
how's that how's that coming along? Do you enjoy it?
I enjoy it thoroughly. You know, I go. I went fishing with my mother-in-law. Who goes fishing with their mother-in-laws? I would be the first one.
Pretty
Uh,
much first
that
one, yeah.
I went fishing with my mother-in-law 2 days straight, and then we sat through, and we just fished, came back home, and yeah, it was pretty fascinating. So I
Have you
do.
have you taken Sushma fishing?
Sushma is, I have to get an appointment to even talk to her. So fishing is like, in fact, I was planning on.
The viewers, once again, to the viewers, Sushma is Kiran's wife, by the way.
Yes,
Why did you say you have to take an appointment?
yeah, because she's always busy. I have to take an appointment with her, and she's just so committed to her work,
Hmm.
and I am very jealous of that fact that she's so committed to her work. I can never really sit and work like her and enjoy working. No,
Yeah, I think she enjoys working.
yeah,
Yeah, nice, nice. It was wonderful talking to you. I learned a lot about astrology. I picked your brain a little, but not as much as I did in this episode. It's wonderful. Like to all viewers, who wants to go and dig deeper into astrology, there's a lot of materials. And Kiran, can you mention the website once again that you mentioned in between?
it's called VedicAstrologer.org.
Vedicastrologer.org. So you can go up there, look up, read up, and yeah, hope everybody loves this episode. And yeah, thanks. Have a
Yeah,
great time, viewers. Anything you
excellent.
want to say, Kiran?
Well, thanks for having me on this episode, and we can deep dive into other aspects of astrology, or certainly some specific aspects of astrology. It's a vast ocean, and we can do this in over multiple segments depending on your users' interests, viewers' interests. And yeah, I hope everybody goes to this web page and download the software, play around with it, and enjoy the tools that we have available today.
Yep. All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Raghu.
Thanks.